In the stillness before dawn, a soft grey light touches the edges of a thatched roof cottage nestled along a sleepy village path in the English countryside, sometime in the early 13th century. The rooster has not yet crowed, and the morning mist lies low upon the earth, curling gently through the dew-covered grass, like a breath from the land itself. Inside, beneath the woven covers of linen and wool, a woman named Alice slowly awakens. She is neither noble nor lowly, merely a weaver's wife. Yet her world, like all in her age, turns on the quiet clockwork of labour, seasons, and tradition. Before thought has even gathered in her mind, she reaches instinctively for the wooden bucket by her bedside. The water within is cool, kept from the night before. With cupped hands, she splashes a few drops upon her face, not so much to cleanse as to awaken the senses. It is not soap that greets her skin, but the simplicity of nature's own essence. There is no lavender perfume, no mint-laced foam, just water and the discipline of daily habit. In the Middle Ages, hygiene was not measured by the standards of modern sterilized scrutiny. It was a rhythm, a ritual, an echo of earlier times when Rome's aqueducts still ran clean and deep. For folk like Alice, cleanliness meant something different. It was about modesty, spiritual wellness, and the maintenance of community order, not the eradication of invisible germs. The very concept of bacteria, of viruses, would not arrive for many centuries. Alice steps out into the brisk air. The village is silent, save for the distant bleating of sheep and the occasional creak of wood as homes stir to life. A narrow brook, fed by a spring deeper in the wood, threads its way past her cottage. Here, she will wash her hands and arms more thoroughly, lifting her skirts just enough to keep them dry. A cloth is used, woven by her own hand, washed in the same stream on another day, and scrubbed lightly across skin. She does not bathe in the modern sense, not daily. Full immersion in a tub, especially with heated water, is reserved for rarer moments. Feast days, certain holy rites, or perhaps when a travelling bathhouse makes its slow and muddy way through the Shire. But to think the medieval peasant never washed would be untrue. They did, but in small, practical ways, part by part, as occasion allowed. The notion of public bathhouses was not unknown in these times. Indeed, the remnants of Roman customs still lingered faintly across Europe. In towns and some larger villages, steamy bathhouses, called stews in England, stood open, offering warmth, washing, and oftentimes companionship. For a few pennies, a weary traveller or a labouring villager might sit in warmth and steam, scrubbed by an attendant or left to their own reflection. Yet such places were far removed from Alice's world. Back in her cottage, Alice prepares to ready her children. She dips a rag into the bucket and rubs down their faces, working with firm yet gentle hands. The children yawn, murmur, and submit to the morning ritual. There is a simplicity to it all, a steadiness born not of laziness or filth, but of practicality and belief. For to be clean in Alice's world was not merely about health, it was about humility. Dirt was the mark of labour, and labour was virtuous. Yet too much filth, especially before Sunday service, could draw whispers. Alice, like many villagers, believes in keeping a presentable countenance, especially before the Lord. Clean fingernails, brushed hair, and a fresh tunic, washed perhaps in ash and lye, are tokens of piety and respect. At the village's small chapel, the priest sometimes speaks of purity, not of the skin, but of the soul. Yet even he keeps a bowl of water by the wooden door, inviting all who enter to cleanse their fingers and forehead, a sacred act of both physical and spiritual preparation. Water, in all its forms, is a recurring character in the medieval story of hygiene. As the day continues, Alice will tend to her duties, spinning flax, preparing meals, scrubbing the hearth with handfuls of sand or fine ash. Her hands will become soiled, her apron stained, her brow streaked with sweat. But at day's end, she will again return to her bucket. She will wash her hands and feet, perhaps even use a scented herb, thyme or mint, if her garden has been generous. Cleanliness, though humble, was part of her daily closure, a way to prepare for rest. And so, the first morning in this long journey draws to a close, not with great drama, but with the quiet persistence of a life lived in rhythm with the earth and sky. Hygiene in medieval times was not absent. It was woven, modestly and quietly, into the fabric of each day. The sun climbs gently now, filtering through thin clouds and brushing golden light across the towers and timbered homes of a bustling medieval town. This is not the still world of fields and sheepfolds, but one of cobblestone and clamour, a place where traders call, carts rumble, and bells from the priory toll out the passing hours with deep, reverent tones. Our view settles upon a young apprentice named Thomas. He rises early in the cramped loft of a carpenter's guild hall, nestled above the workshop where the scent of sawdust never quite fades. Below him sleep 3 other boys, limbs tangled in shared blankets. As with the countryside, water is their first acquaintance of the morning. Thomas, like his fellows, reaches for a simple pitcher filled the night before. He pours just enough into a chipped basin to rinse his hands and face. There is no mirror, no soap as we would know it, only a bar made of animal fat, ash, and crushed herbs, sometimes scarce, often shared. The goal is not to be pristine, but presentable. Living in town offers different challenges. Space is limited, privacy rare, and the needs of hundreds, sometimes thousands, press against the narrow streets. While a villager like Alice may cleanse herself in a clear stream, Thomas must venture to the communal well, or a rain barrel, or perhaps a stone cistern fed by gutters along the roofs. These public sources are lifelines, but also battlegrounds for access and hygiene. Down in the alleys, another aspect of medieval cleanliness emerges: the handling of waste. Chamber pots are emptied each morning, sometimes into designated cesspits, sometimes less carefully. The town employs men known as gong farmers to collect and carry this waste beyond the walls under cover of night. It is thankless work, but necessary, and those who do it are paid handsomely by the standards of their class. For the less affluent, however, a dark alley or run-off gutter might suffice. This, more than anything, defines urban hygiene in the Middle Ages. Not a lack of will, but a lack of infrastructure. Streets double as drains, open gutters, known in some places as kennels, run down the centre or edge, carrying waste toward a river or trench. In dry weather, dust chokes the air. In rain, the streets run foul. Yet, amid this squalor, a strange kind of order persists. Bakers sweep their thresholds. Butchers scrub their stalls with buckets of vinegar and water, deterring flies. Housewives throw out their waste with a shouted warning, "Gardez-l'eau," a cry in Old French meaning, "Watch out for the water," from which some suggest we derive the word loo. Bathhouses, too, still stand in many towns, often by the river. In England, they are called stews. These establishments offer more than warmth. They offer community. Men and women may bathe together, separated only by wooden screens or by hour. The water is heated by fires fed from below, poured into large wooden tubs or shallow stone pools. Scrubbing is done with linen cloths, pumice, or even gentle sand. Soap, when available, is precious. For the church, public bathing is both a blessing and a temptation. Cleanliness is good, but too much leisure or mixed company invites sin. And so bathhouses rise and fall with the mood of the times, welcomed in one reign, condemned in the next. But they endure because people need them. Thomas, on his half-day of rest, might visit one with his master and fellow apprentices. For a few pence, he can soak away the grime of the workshop, the dust of the roads. It is not a silent experience. Townspeople murmur, children splash, steam hisses, but it is human, and for many, it is healing. Within homes, urban dwellers do what they can. Floors are swept with bundles of herbs, lavender, thyme, or rosemary, not only to clean, but to freshen the air. These herbs, believed to ward off illness, are hung in doorways and scattered across rush-covered floors. Twice a year, the rushes are changed, raked out, burned and replaced. Yet under them, Debris collects, crumbs, lost beads, even the bones of small animals. The effort is not perfect, but it is earnest. Tooth care is another curious chapter. While toothbrushes do not yet exist, some rub teeth with linen cloth or chew on twigs of particular trees, like hazel or elm. Mint, sage, and salt are all used in homemade pastes. Mouths are rinsed with wine, vinegar, or strong herbs. Clean breath is not just a mark of health, it is considered courteous, even moral. Women, especially those in guild households or among the merchant class, often keep small combs and picks carved from bone or wood. These are used daily, both for lice and for grooming. Hair is an important marker of status and hygiene. It is rarely washed completely, but is combed thoroughly, braided, and often covered in veils or caps. In the town square, a notice board may bear edicts from the mayor or lord, warning against dumping waste near markets, or requiring butchers to dispose of entrails beyond the gates. Enforcement is uneven, but the intent is clear. Cleanliness matters, not just for comfort, but for order. For all the flaws of urban hygiene, medieval people were not indifferent. They worked within their means, shaped by what they knew, what they believed, and what they feared. Disease was often blamed on bad air, miasma, and so efforts were made to scent the air, to burn incense or fragrant wood, to avoid foul smells. They did not yet know the truth of bacteria, but they knew that stench brought sickness and that clean spaces felt safer. And so, Thomas, like countless others, lives a life framed by this balance, between labour and rest, between filth and form. In his pocket, he carries a handkerchief scented with crushed mint. In his thoughts, he dreams of someday building a home of his own, with windows to let in light, and perhaps even a private place to bathe. As the bell tolls again and market day stirs to life, the town breathes its fragrant, chaotic, and deeply human breath. Part wood smoke, part rosewater, part manure, part bread. Far from the busy clamour of towns and markets, in a quiet vale wrapped in morning fog, stands a Benedictine monastery, its stone walls cool and shadowed beneath creeping ivy. The hush of early prayers hangs in the air like mist over a river, and the only sounds are the rustling of habits and the rhythmic toll of a bell, a sound as old as memory, calling the faithful to order and devotion. Brother Anselm, a monk of some 30 winters, rises from his straw-stuffed mattress. His day begins before sunrise, long before the first light paints the eastern sky. Like all monks in this house, he lives by the rule of Saint Benedict, a code that speaks of humility, obedience, labour, and prayer. But woven among these spiritual threads is a deep attention to cleanliness, both of the soul and, more subtly, of the body. He dresses in silence, the fabric of his habit, rough but clean. Before descending to the chapel for matins, the first of the 8 canonical hours, he steps into the cloister's lavatorium, a narrow stone alcove where water flows continuously from a carved spout into a basin below. Here, monks wash their hands and faces in turn, using no soap, but rather relying on the cool, clean flow of water fed by nearby springs or cisterns. The lavatorium is more than a place for washing. It is a space of quiet reflection, a bridge between the physical and the spiritual. The water's motion, the gentle splashing, the feel of smooth stone beneath the hands, all combine to offer a moment of grounding before the divine work begins. Beside the basin sits a shared linen towel, often changed, dried under the sun, and sometimes steeped in rosemary to deter illness. Monastic life, unlike that of peasants or townsfolk, is ordered with precision. Cleanliness here is a virtue not of vanity, but of discipline. Each monk is responsible for his bedding, his robes, and his tools. Communal baths, when taken, occur in scheduled fashion, perhaps weekly or fortnightly, depending on the wealth of the monastery and the availability of fuel for heating water. In warmer climates, monks may bathe more often. In colder places, less so, but never with indulgence. Soap is made within the monastery walls, often by the brothers themselves. Rendered animal fat, lye from wood ash, and handfuls of herbs, lavender, thyme, even crushed bay leaves, are boiled in large copper pots, poured into moulds, and left to cure. The resulting bars are earthy in colour, often green or brown, and used sparingly. Some are reserved for the infirmary, where older or sick monks are tended by the herbalist or physician. Brother Anselm, who has worked in the scriptorium for many years, often has ink-stained fingers. After vespers in the evening, he gently scrubs them with a slice of soap and a piece of rough linen. It is a small ritual, done in silence, yet it connects him to generations before. In every movement, there is intention. To cleanse the hands, to prepare the mind. The monastery's latrines, known as reredaughters, are marvels of medieval engineering, at least compared to the crude arrangements outside the walls. These long, covered structures, often built over flowing streams or carefully dug channels, allow waste to be carried away by water, an echo of Roman sanitation, preserved in this quiet world of prayer. Each monk uses them in turn with modesty and discretion. They do not speak of it. Instead, the experience is folded into the daily rhythm, a hidden act of respect for the temple of the body. Lavenders or rosemary may be hung in the space to sweeten the air, and sand is scattered beneath the feet to keep the stone floors dry. In the infirmary wing, cleanliness is sacred. Elder monks are washed gently by novices or lay brothers, their feet bathed weekly in warm water with scented herbs. It is an act not merely of sanitation, but of love and humility. Christ washed the feet of his disciples, and so must they serve one another. Monks trained in healing arts understand that wounds fester less when kept clean, that fevers subside when linens are changed, that a mouth rinsed with vinegar and sage does not reek. They do not know the names of bacteria, nor do they measure microbes, but they feel the link between filth and suffering. Thus, they wash their hands before tending the ill. They boil cloths. They cleanse floors with ash and water. Monastic kitchens, too, maintain strict rules of order. Knives are wiped, pots are scoured with sand, and tables are rinsed. The monk cook may not speak during meals, but his hands move with care. A clean table, like a clean heart, honors the Creator. Perhaps the most poetic moment of monastic hygiene comes during the ritual of foot washing on Holy Thursday, the day before Easter. In imitation of Christ, the abbot kneels to wash the feet of 12 brothers, chosen each year. The water is warm, the act solemn, the room lit by candles. No one speaks, but the silence carries 1,000 prayers. It is here that cleanliness becomes compassion, that soap and water becomes something holy. Brother Anselm, though quiet and withdrawn, remembers this ritual each year with profound gratitude. As the abbot cradles his foot and pours the water, he is reminded that hygiene, in its most humble form, is love. And so, within these ancient walls, far from the grime of cities or the toil of peasant fields, cleanliness survives, not as perfection, but as a daily gesture, a quiet homage to order, to healing, and to sacred care. Beyond the village, past cloisters and farmland, there rises a stone silhouette against the blue-grey sky, a castle, proud and enduring, its turrets catching the morning sun like watchful eyes. Flags flutter from its heights, and within its fortified walls live those whom the world calls noble, lords and ladies who dine on silver, dress in silk, and yet, too, must tend to the quiet realities of the human body. Lady Isabel, the mistress of this keep, is already awake. Her chamber is large by medieval standards, with arched windows that overlook the inner bailey and floors, lined with thick woolen carpets. But for all its grandeur, her morning begins in humble ritual, not so unlike that of Alice the weaver or Brother Anselm the monk. By her bedside stands a servant, a young woman named Elin, who brings a polished ewer of warm water and a wide bronze basin. Lady Isabel dips her hands first, then her face, then, with a separate cloth, gently pats her neck and arms. She does not bathe completely. Such an act is reserved for particular days or when illness dictates it, but she maintains a practiced cleanliness, layer by layer, with care and ceremony. For the noblewoman, cleanliness is both a matter of pride and perception. Her hands must be smooth, her breath sweet, her garments freshened with herbs. She wears perfume distilled from roses, lavender, or orange blossom, stored in delicate glass vials brought from the East by traders. Yet these scents are not mere vanity. They are thought to protect, to purify the air around her and ward off sickness borne on foul smells. Soap in the castle is of finer make, blended with almond oil, olive, or imported scents, and kept wrapped in cloth or wood to preserve its aroma. When Lady Isabel washes, she uses this precious bar with a soft linen, scrubbing gently at her wrists and behind her ears. She will later comb her hair with a finely carved bone comb, sometimes dipped in scented oil to deter lice. The castle itself is a strange harmony of grandeur and grime. At the highest levels, tapestries hang heavy on the walls, absorbing some of the smoke and odour from torches and hearths. Floors are strewn with herbs and rushes, changed quarterly, though never quite free of dust and crumbs. Servants sweep regularly, using brooms of bundled twigs, and open windows on sunny days to air the rooms. But for all the care taken in the upper chambers, the lower halls, kitchens, guardrooms and storerooms are less refined. There, scraps collect, smoke lingers, and cleaning is a daily battle waged with buckets, cloths, and elbow grease. The kitchens especially are a hub of heat and scent, where spice stews bubble, fish are gutted, and great slabs of meat are carved. Scullions scrub tables with sand, rinse pots in boiling water, and scatter mint beneath the flagstones to mask the smell. And then there are the privies. Castles of wealth often include a structure known as the garderobe, a latrine built into the castle wall itself. It is a narrow room, sometimes just a seat above a chute, with a vertical shaft leading down to a pit or moat below. The placement is intentional. Any waste falls beyond the inner walls, often swept by rain, or less ideally, cleaned by labourers. To keep the space bearable, herbs such as juniper or thyme are hung by the seat, and cloth soaked in vinegar might be used for wiping. Nobles rarely clean these spaces themselves. Stewards and lower servants bear the task. Yet even among the elite, the odour cannot be fully banished. Interestingly, the word garderobe also refers to the castle's wardrobe. In colder seasons, cloaks and robes were sometimes hung near the privy's vent shaft, as it was believed the strong air would deter moths and lice, a curious mingling of foulness and function. Bathing among nobility is ceremonial, often public in its preparation and private in its act. A tub, a wooden or metal basin, might be brought into the lady's chamber, lined with cloth, and filled with warm water carried by servants. Scented herbs, rosemary, rose petals, marjoram, are steeped in the water. Privacy screens are set up. The bathing is not hurried. It is an event, a pause in the day, sometimes accompanied by music or soft conversation. Men, too, take pride in grooming. Lord Robert, Isabel's husband, wears a neatly trimmed beard, brushed daily with boar bristles, and sometimes scented with balm. He bathes less frequently, but uses scented cloths to wipe down after hunts or battle drills. His boots are scrubbed. His nails are trimmed with a small, sharp knife. To appear clean is to appear disciplined, a knightly virtue. Children in noble households are taught hygiene early. Nursemaids wipe their faces after meals, clean their hands before prayer, and wash them in warm water each evening. Their cradles are lined with fresh linens, often changed and aired, and small cloths are used in place of modern diapers, washed daily by laundresses. Indeed, the role of laundress is a vital one in noble life. These women toil by the river or at heated stone basins, scrubbing garments with lye soap, beating them with paddles, and drying them across hedges or lines. The fresh smell of linen is prized, and noble garments, though rarely laundered in full, are spot cleaned and aired between wearings. Even during feasts, a trace of hygiene is kept. Guests are offered a basin and towel at the start to cleanse their hands. Courses are eaten with fingers and knives, but cleanliness of the hand is taken seriously, especially before touching bread, which is often shared. And so in stone towers and velvet chambers, the noble household moves through its own rituals of cleanliness, part honor, part superstition, part aspiration. Not sterile, not modern, yet far from uncaring. There are moments in history when the very air seems to change, when streets fall silent, when doors are shuttered, when the clamour of village and town is replaced by the echo of morning. The 14th century bore witness to such a time, when the Black Death swept through Europe like a shadow made of breath and fear. In 1348, the plague arrived in England. It had travelled silently aboard ships, through markets, over hills, and through alleyways. It came not with fanfare, but with coughs, with boils, with fever. And suddenly, hygiene, always present, always ritual, became desperate, holy, and sometimes futile. In a small hamlet outside the walls of York, a healer named Matilda wakes before the sun, not to tend her garden, but to burn sage and bay leaves upon her hearth. The smoke curls upward in plumes, filling her cottage with pungent bitterness. She believes, as many do, that sweet smoke can purify the air, driving away the miasma, the bad vapours thought to carry disease. She has hung rue and rosemary in every window, tied with red thread. Her neighbours pass her doorway with nods of approval, clutching pomanders, small balls of herbs and resin, pressed tightly against their noses. These scented charms are believed to guard the lungs, to make the air clean, to keep death at bay. In towns, the fear is thick as soot. Carters wheel away the dead at dawn, their faces covered in cloth soaked in vinegar. Streets once filled with children now bear only the scrape of wheels and the soft tread of friars offering last rites. Public fountains are scrubbed. Water carriers rinse buckets with salt and ash. Lime is scattered in the gutters, and homes are marked with chalk, a sign of infection or mercy. The plague has altered the rhythm of cleanliness. Where once hands were washed in quiet routine, they are now scrubbed with urgency. Where soap was a tool of modest living, it becomes a talisman of survival. People wash not out of habit, but in frantic hope. In wealthier homes, basins of vinegar are placed in the halls. Visitors, if any are allowed, must wash hands and even feet before entering. Clothing is beaten, brushed, hung in sunlight, or burned outright. Some strip down before crossing their thresholds, leaving boots and cloaks at the door. The air itself is now an enemy. Barber surgeons walk the streets with bloodied aprons, offering lancing for boils, purging, or the application of strange salves, mixtures of mercury, crushed emerald, or powdered toad. Matilda, wiser and gentler in her ways, offers elderflower water and honeyed balm, teaches mothers how to clean wounds gently, how to boil water before bathing infants. Bathhouses, once a place of cleansing and community, are now viewed with suspicion. The heat, the steam, the gathering of bodies, all seem to draw death closer. Many close their doors. Others remain open, quieter now, with bathers using their own towels and paying extra for solitude. The poor, who cannot afford such refuge, turn instead to riverbanks and spring-fed pools. Gravediggers are among the few who still bathe regularly, not for comfort, but to rid themselves of filth and fear. They rinse with ash and soapwort, scrub under nails with bone picks, and burn their clothes at week's end. Some wear long leather coats and masks filled with herbs, the beak-like noses stuffed with thyme, cloves, and rue. Within monasteries, the rituals of cleanliness continue, but are overwhelmed. Lavatoriums are stained with tears. Monks who once washed their hands in silence now scrub floors, walls, and bodies, sometimes their own, as death moves from cell to cell. The infirmaries are full, and the soap cauldrons bubble day and night. In cities like Florence and Paris, laws are passed, streets must be cleaned, dead animals buried, refuse burned. Barber shops are ordered to sweep twice daily. Privies are to be emptied weekly, not monthly. These laws are rarely enforced evenly, but they show a growing truth. Hygiene is no longer just a virtue, it is a weapon. Doctors, scarce and frightened, write treatises on cleanliness. They recommend rosewater for washing, lavender oil for bedding, fumigation for rooms. Some suggest full immersion baths with sage, mint, and vinegar. Others advise against bathing at all, claiming that warm water opens the pores and invites illness. Confusion reigns. Amidst this, ordinary people do what they can. A woman in London hangs wet sheets soaked in vinegar across her window. A farmer in Aragon covers himself in garlic before tending his animals. A young boy in Ghent bathes daily, in icy streams, his mother believing it will make him too cold for the plague to enter. Not all survive, but in their routines, we find a story of human resilience. Cleanliness, in these years, takes on new meaning. It is no longer simply the care of the self. It is an act of protection, a gift to one's neighbours, a fragile hope against an unseen enemy. Matilda continues her work, washing the faces of the dying, applying clean cloths to their fevered brows, whispering prayers not only for their souls, but for the hands that touch them. Her cottage smells of lavender, vinegar, and ash, a blend of fear, wisdom, and love. The plague will recede, eventually, and in its wake, new understandings will rise. Towns will build new fountains, dig deeper latrines, and wash more frequently. But for now, in these years of shadow, cleanliness becomes an act of courage, a quiet, steady resistance. They came with bags of leather and pouches of linen, carrying tools of wood and steel, bundles of dried herbs, and the steady, measured calm of those who had seen suffering many times before. The medieval healer was not only a figure of aid, but one of trust, of resilience, and above all, of pragmatic cleanliness. In the town of Winchester, nestled beneath the cathedral's spire, lives a woman named Isolde, known by many as Mistress of Balms. Her home is modest, a timber-framed cottage near the edge of the market, but within its walls lies an ordered world, rows of dried marjoram, bundles of thyme and yarrow, pots of rendered lard, and bowls of ash soap sit on shelves beside beeswax, candles and combs made of bone. Her mornings begin before most roosters crow. The first act is not prayer nor meal, but cleansing. Hands are washed in warm water steeped with rosemary and bay, and tools, herbs shears, tweezers, scalpels have sharpened. Iron are boiled or wiped with vinegar. Isolde learned long ago that wounds treated with clean hands fare better, that salves last longer when kept in clean pots, and that even the smallest attention to tidiness can mean the difference between healing and rot. She is not alone in this. Ritual. Throughout medieval Europe, a quiet brotherhood and sisterhood of healers and physicians practiced cleanliness, not because they fully understood contagion, but because they understood survival. The barber surgeon sharpened his blades daily, rinsed his bowl in vinegar between bleedings, and wiped his apron with lye soap between patients. At least the good ones did. A careless surgeon might spread disease. A careful one, though lacking full knowledge, might spare a life. Midwives, too, carried this wisdom. They boiled linens before childbirth, washed their hands with soap made from ash and tallow, and steeped cloths in warm chamomile to soothe both mother and child. They rinsed their birthing stools with spirits, burned old rags, and changed their aprons frequently. It was not modern sterility, but it was purposeful sanitation, centuries ahead of its time in instinct, if not in science. In large towns and cities, universities began to whisper of deeper knowledge. The medical faculties of Paris, Bologna, and Oxford taught of the four humours, blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile, and emphasized balance. Though their theories were incomplete, they often recommended bathing, purging, and cleanliness to restore health. Physicians wore long robes, often lined with herbs, and prescribed scented waters, steam treatments, and laxatives to cleanse the body within. Steam baths became popular not only for pleasure, but for perceived purification. In some cities, entire facilities were dedicated to heated stone rooms, where patients could sweat out their ailments. Still, not all healers were cloaked in university gowns. Many, like Isolde, learned through apprenticeship and experience. She knew which wounds would fester if left untended, how to wash with salt and honey, when to cleanse a feverish child with vinegar cloths, or to draw pus from an infected cut with a hot poultice. She learned to keep her hands clean and her tools sharp. She learned, too, that clean spaces invited trust. Her patients, poor, merchant, even noble, stepped into a place where the air smelled of lavender and lye, where linens were changed regularly, where the floor was swept twice a day. They often remarked on it. "It smells like health," they would say, and Isolde would smile and nod. She knew the scent mattered. Barber surgeons operated in less gentle surroundings. In their shops, often near markets or guild halls, they offered haircuts and bloodletting, tooth pulling, and minor surgeries. The best among them cleaned their razors with flame or strong drink, washed their hands in salted water, and wore aprons they changed with care. The worst ignored all these things, and their clients bore the cost. Hospitals, such as they were, provided yet another view into medieval hygiene. These institutions, often run by monastic orders, offered beds, food, and care for the sick and poor. Cleanliness here was tied to religious devotion. Sheets were washed with ash soap and dried in sunlight. Floors were swept with sand and straw, then sprinkled with herbs. Patients were washed weekly, sometimes daily, if water allowed. Some hospitals even separated the ill by type of disease, a practice ahead of its time. In leper houses, water basins were placed at every entrance, and clothing was often burned upon entry. Though fear guided these decisions as much as reason, the effect was undeniably one of greater hygiene. Back in Winchester, Isolde prepares to treat a young boy with a festering wound. She begins by boiling her cloths in a kettle over her hearth. She grinds dried sage and salt into a powder, mixes it with warmed honey, and lays the salve into a clean beeswax jar. She opens the shutters to let light pour in. Then she washes her hands, first in rosemary water, then in a rinse of vinegar, and cools the boy inside. The wound is cleaned gently, wrapped in linen, and watched over in the days that follow. She teaches the boy's mother how to cleanse it, how to make more salve, how to boil linens before reuse. It is not simply medicine, it is education, protection, a gift passed from one hand to another. And though Isolde cannot see the invisible world we now know of microbes and pathogens, she can see something else, that a clean touch can be a saving touch, that those who care for the sick must first care for cleanliness. As evening falls and her shutters are drawn, she lights a sprig of juniper in the fire. The smoke curls once more through her cottage. Not a magic spell, but a gesture of hope. The morning sun climbs above the rooftops of Canterbury, spreading soft light over the bustle of its Thursday market. Tents ripple in the breeze. Carts creak along stone roads, and the air is rich with a mingling of scents, some sharp and sour, others sweet and soothing. Here, amidst vegetables, meat pies, and bolts of wool, lies another corner of medieval life, the business of cleanliness. A woman named Alwen stands behind a stall shaded by canvas, its edges weighted with stones. She is a soap seller, her hands red from lye and lavender, her nails short but clean. Before her, laid in rows upon oiled cloth, are dozens of hand-cut bars, some green with rosemary, others flecked with ash and fleabane. She greets customers not with a cry, but with a gentle nod and the quiet confidence of someone who deals in small but vital comforts. Soap, though not universal, has become increasingly sought after. No longer solely the domain of monasteries or noble estates, it finds its place in markets, sold by those who make it by hand, mixing tallow or lard with wood ash, then stirring and pouring into wooden frames. The process takes days, the curing even longer, but the result is a block of modest magic, cleansing, comforting, and, for many, essential. Customers come steadily. A baker's wife buys a bar steeped in thyme for scrubbing kneading bowls. A cobbler's apprentice selects one with mint and bay, wrapped in cloth to mask the smell of feet. A travelling friar purchases soap with marjoram, believing it to lift spirits as well as soil. Each exchange is quiet, practical, and yet the presence of soap in their daily lives speaks volumes. Next to Alwyn's stall, a washerwoman named Celes sets up her trade. Unlike Alwyn, she offers not goods, but services. Her booth is smaller, with 2 large tubs, one cold, one warm, and several baskets filled with folded linen. She speaks in song, a lilting rhyme about stains and river stones, beckoning passers-by with her tune. Wash and wring, rinse and dry, bring your linens, don't be shy. Celes, like many washerwomen of the age, walks a line between labourer and healer. Her hands are soaked daily in herb-laced waters, soapwort for its lather, sage for scent, and vinegar for stubborn grime. She knows every trick for lifting grease, every fold where lice may hide. She does not merely wash, she purifies, refreshes, restores. By noon, a queue forms at her tubs. A tired house servant hands over a stained tunic. A scribe presents ink-spotted cuffs. A merchant offers undergarments heavy with dust. Celis takes them all with a nod, scrubbing gently, rhythmically, her sleeves rolled high and a scarf tied around her hair. Around her, other market stalls join, the symphony of cleanliness. An apothecary with glass vials sells lavender oil and elderflower water. A spice merchant, whose goods often double as medicine, offers cloves, cinnamon, and dried orange peel, burned in homes not just for flavour, but for fragrance and protection. Even the candle maker contributes. Her beeswax tapers, when lit, cleanse, the air of heavy odours. Each of these wares plays a part in a world where hygiene is not always easy, but always sought. At the fountain near the square's edge, 2 children fill buckets. They laugh as they splash, their hands red from cold water. Beside them, an old man rinses apples, his sleeves pushed up, his face smiling. The fountain is more than a water source. It is a place of communal care. And like many others across medieval towns, it is watched over by laws and by habit. No waste may be dumped near it, no animals allowed. Clean water is prized, and those who respect it in turn. Alwyn pauses for a moment as a noblewoman's steward approaches. He selects several bars and places them in a leather pouch. His master, it seems, is hosting guests and wishes. The linens to be washed with soap-bearing rose petals. Alwyn wraps them in a fresh cloth, tied with twine. A small gesture, but one that connects palace and market, elite and artisan. Nearby, a group of young girls gather around a minstrel who sings not of knights or saints, but of bathing and herbs. His lute plucks a gentle tune, his lyrics filled with humour and warmth. He sings of a washerwoman who outwits a nobleman by selling him scented water at 10 times its worth. The crowd laughs. The message is clear. Even the poor understand the value of cleanliness, even if the rich forget. By afternoon, the market's tone softens. Heat rises from the stones. Alwyn sells her last bar of juniper soap to a shepherd who claims it keeps wolves and lice at bay. Celes rinses out her tub, watching the dirty water run into the street gutter, where it mingles with rain and carries away the memory of the day's labour. Neither woman will be rich, but they will be remembered. For in a world where filth is easy and disease swift, those who provide the tools of cleanliness are guardians in their own right. They do not preach, they do not command, but through their hands pass the small comforts that keep a people whole. As the market winds down and shadows stretch across the square, a sense of quiet satisfaction settles over the stalls. Soap is gone, linens are drying, and the air carries the soft scent of rosemary and smoke, a testament to a day spent in the service of health and dignity. As twilight deepens and the stars stir above the steeples and fields, the medieval world slips into another rhythm, one shaped not only by custom and labour, but by belief, fear, and unseen forces. For many, hygiene was not only a matter of water and soap, but of charms and invocations, rituals whispered in candlelight, and objects worn close to the skin like shields against corruption. In a thatched home on the edge of a deep wood in Brittany, a widow named Marie begins her nightly ritual. Before she climbs into bed, she sprinkles salt along her threshold and places a sprig of fennel above the door. She ties a small pouch of dried vervain and rue beneath her shift, a charm stitched by her mother. To keep the rot from finding you, the old woman had said. Marie has never seen a germ, nor heard of bacteria, but she knows the touch of sickness. She has buried 2 children, each taken by fever, and she keeps her house clean with a kind of reverent purpose. Floors are swept daily, her bedding is aired, her hearth scrubbed with ash and vinegar. And when a neighbour visits, they rinse their hands in a bowl of rosemary water by the door. To Marie, and many like her, illness is more than a physical ailment. It is a moral imbalance, a spiritual breach. And so, hygiene blends with the sacred, the magical, and the ancient. Throughout medieval Europe, this blend was deeply rooted. Folk belief and formal religion often walked side by side, creating a world where cleanliness had as much to do with prayer as it did with soap. Bathing might be preceded by blessings. Cloths used in healing were sometimes sprinkled with holy water or held up to relics before touching the skin. Herbs used for washing, like hyssop, thyme, and bay, were not only fragrant but symbolic. Hyssop, in particular, held scriptural power. "Purge me with hyssop, and I shall be clean," the Psalms declared. To wash with it was to align body and soul with divine order. Amulets were common. A child might wear a silver charm shaped like a cross or a crescent moon, filled with frankincense or myrrh. A field hand might tuck a clove of garlic in his boot, not for flavor, but for protection. The smell, he believed, warded off evil air, what learned men called miasma. Scent in this world was not indulgence. It was armor. Midwives and healers often kept small books, handed down through generations, filled with recipes and incantations. A common charm for protection read, "Wash the brow with rosewater clear, whisper thrice this word of cheer. As clean as the virgin's veil, no pox shall rise, no breath shall fail." Some used charms sewn into garments, invisible yet believed, to be potent. Others burned bundles of herbs while scrubbing sick rooms, murmuring the names of saints or reciting verses from the Gospel of John. Even wells and springs held special meaning. Pilgrims would journey miles to bathe in sacred waters at St. Winifred's Well in Wales or the Fontaine de Saint-Antoine in France, believing the waters to heal skin diseases, cleanse spirits, or bring fertility. Monks might bless the water before bathing. Mothers might carry a vial home to wash a newborn's feet on their 7th night. In times of plague or drought, communities gathered for public blessings. Priests would walk the boundaries of a village, sprinkling holy water and chanting prayers to drive away pestilence. At times, entire streets were washed, not with soap, but with spring water mixed with herbs and salt, poured in symbolic gesture. Yet not all rituals were sacred in the church's eyes. Witches, or those accused as such, were often said to use hygiene-related charms in their craft. A sachet of soapwort hidden in a crib, a basin of water left under the moonlight, a comb buried beneath a doorstep. These acts, benign to some, were seen by others as evidence of dark arts. The same care shown by healers like Isolde might draw suspicion if practiced by a poor widow on the fringes of a village. The line between faith and fear was thin. Still, many rituals persisted, quietly passed from mother to daughter, from healer to apprentice. They endured because they worked, not always in curing disease, but in bringing comfort, hope, and a sense of control in a world often ruled by chaos. Even the architecture reflected this belief. Cathedrals were built with carved fountains, or lavabos at their entrances, where the faithful washed hands before entering. The symbolic cleansing mirrored a deeper truth, that purity of body was tied to purity of spirit. Monks washed before copying sacred texts. Nuns scrubbed their cells in silence. Cleanliness, though never perfect, was pursued with intent. At night, Marie places her soap, made from ash, goat fat, and lemon balm, beside her basin, and recites a simple prayer. Not for wealth, not for love, but for health and cleanliness, and the strength to rise again the next morning without fever. Her world is quiet, but not naive. It is filled with rituals that weave together the physical and the mystical, the seen and unseen. And in that weaving, a kind of wisdom emerges, one that sees hygiene not as a separate act, but as a sacred rhythm of life itself. The medieval world was one of labor. In fields and forges, kitchens and dye houses, hands were tools, calloused, stained, and busy from dawn until dusk. But in a time when water was precious and soap often dear, hygiene was shaped as much by one's trade as by one's beliefs. And in the guild halls and workshops of the age, cleanliness became a matter of pride, survival, and skill. Let us step into the tannery, perhaps the most pungent of all medieval trades. It stands by the river, downwind from the rest of the town. Here, leather is made, transforming raw hides into supple material for shoes, belts, saddles, and armor. The process is brutal. Skins are first soaked in water to loosen the hair, then scraped clean and immersed in vats of lye, urine, or fermented. Animal brains. The stench is deep and earthy, a smell that clings to skin and clothes long after the sun has set. But even here, there is hygiene, strange, rough, but unmistakable. Tanners wash frequently, not for freshness, but to keep the chemical burns and infections at bay. Their hands, though cracked and toughened, are cleaned in ash water. Their tools, scrapers, knives, stirring poles, are rinsed daily. If not for cleanliness, the hides would rot, the work would fail, and disease might spread. Nearby, in a guild hall, shaded by wooden beams, a barber sharpens his blades. Barbers were more than haircutters. They were surgeons, dentists, and healers. A good barber kept his tools spotless. Razors were rinsed in spirits or boiled water. Cups for bloodletting were scoured between uses. Combs were cleaned with vinegar, and basins polished to reflect the client's face. The red and white pole that still marks the trade today was no mere decoration. It symbolized blood and bandages, the dual nature of their work. Customers came, not only for grooming, but for cleanliness itself. Hair was cut to reduce lice, beards were trimmed to avoid filth, ears were cleaned with linen wrapped on picks of silver or bone. The barber's bench was swept, the cloths laundered. To be clean in his shop was to be respectable in the world beyond. Then there were the laundresses. Few trades spoke more to the struggle of hygiene than theirs. Most worked by rivers or in communal washing spaces. They scrubbed clothing with paddles, rubbed soap into seams, and soaked garments in lye or stale urine to lift stains. It was laborious, wet, and constant. Yet their hands shaped the appearance of noble households, merchant families, and even clergy. Many laundresses kept secret recipes, mixtures of ash, chalk, and herbs that could draw grease from wool or scent linen for the Lord's bedchamber. They hung clothes across hedgerows or wooden frames, shaking them thrice before folding. Some even offered airing services, laying out clothing in sunlight to bleach and refresh between washes. Despite their importance, they were often overlooked, until someone returned from travel with garments stiff with sweat and road dust. Then they were sought with gratitude, even reverence. In the smoky halls of the cookshops, cleanliness fought for survival. A butcher's stall, in particular, was a theatre of hygiene. Blood, offal, and bones piled quickly, if not managed. Good. Butchers cleaned their knives after each cut, scrubbed their blocks with vinegar and hot water, and swept sawdust from the floor daily. Some towns had inspectors, appointed by guilds or magistrates, who visited markets and fined those whose stalls were deemed too foul. Water barrels stood nearby, used not only for meat, but for the men who cut it. Aprons were rinsed. Arms were washed. The best butchers wore sleeves rolled high and fingernails clipped short. They knew that rot bred fast in summer, and that flies followed filth. In bakeries, where flour dusted the air and warmth filled every corner, cleanliness took a different form. Surfaces were wiped with cloths soaked in lemon balm. Ovens were swept, of ash before each new batch. Wooden kneading troughs were rinsed in salt water, and hands were scrubbed before touching dough. A loaf might feed a dozen mouths. If handled poorly, it could carry illness instead of nourishment. Guilds played a vital role in promoting hygiene within the trades. Apprentices were trained not only in craft, but in care. A cooper learned to rinse his barrels in boiling water. A tailor was taught to wash his measuring tapes and oil his shears to prevent rust. A blacksmith, though smudged with soot, would wipe his tools clean before end of day, both to honour the metal and to avoid injury from dull or dirty blades. Guild rules, posted in halls or recited aloud at meetings, often included hygiene mandates. Some even kept communal soap, vinegar, and towels at their entrances, so that members could clean themselves before meetings or communal meals. And yet, not all trades could avoid filth. Muckrakers, gong farmers, and waste collectors lived and worked at the edge of society. Their labour kept cities clean, but at great cost to their own health. Still, even they developed routines, changing clothes, washing in streams, rubbing, herbs on wrists to mask the scent. It was not vanity that drove these practices. It was necessity and pride. For the tradesman or tradeswoman, cleanliness was a mark of skill. A clean shop invited customers. A clean hand showed respect. A clean tool saved lives. In this world of narrow streets and open markets, where disease was never far, cleanliness in work was not a luxury. It was part of the craft. As dusk falls over the city, workshops shutter, barbers put away razors, bakers sweep crumbs, laundresses fold the last of the day's linens. The river, tinged with twilight, flows gently past them all, carrying away not just water and soap, but the quiet legacy of 1,000 hands, working each day to keep a messy world just a little bit cleaner. In the tender hush of early morning, as the cock crows and a faint blue light touches the stone of cottage and castle alike, small feet begin to stir. The children of the medieval world rise not to toys or leisure, but to chores, lessons, and, in many homes, the gentle but essential rituals of cleanliness. In a low-roofed cottage in a Devonshire hamlet, a girl named Liana rubs sleep from her eyes. She is 7, with flaxen hair in loose braids and a smudge of soot on her cheek from yesterday's hearth cleaning. Beside her, her younger brother Thomas stirs, still curled in woolen blankets. Their mother, Alice, whom we met before, kneels by a basin of cool water drawn from the stream the night before. The first act of the day is always the same. Hands, face, and neck are washed, one child at a time, with linen cloths dipped in the basin. It is a habit more than a ceremony, but its repetition gives it meaning. Even in households where water must be fetched by the pailful, children are taught to cleanse the most visible parts of themselves. Not to sparkle, but to be ready for prayers, for meals, for the world. In towns and cities, children of merchants and craftsmen learn similar lessons. Young apprentices, some as young as 8, are roused early by masters or senior journeymen. Before entering the workroom or market stall, they are expected to wash their hands and faces, to comb their hair, and to present themselves with what dignity their station allows. This routine is drilled into them not as kindness, but as discipline. A well-kept apprentice reflects well on the master. Cleanliness is order. Order is trust. In noble households, the expectations are stricter, though no less caring. A page in service to a lord is awakened before dawn. He dons clean linen, brushes his hair, and is led by an older servant to the washstand. There he learns not only to clean himself, but to prepare basins and towels for his masters. Boys and girls alike are taught that to serve is to cleanse, to bring water, to offer cloths, to help others into a fresh robe or chemise. For noble daughters, tutors often include instruction in the arts of bathing, perfume blending, and linen preparation. Cleanliness becomes a performance of virtue, an extension of grace, hospitality, and femininity. They learn to wash their faces with rosewater, to scent their clothes with thyme, and to brush their hair with lavender oil. They are praised for neatness, for soft hands, for the care of their chambers. Yet no matter the household, medieval children learn through watching. They watch their mothers wash bedding, boil cloths, sweep thresholds with brooms of hazel. They see fathers wash their hands before meals, apprentices rinse their tools, and monks cleanse their fingers before the host. Cleanliness, though rarely explained in full, is absorbed like sunlight, by mimicry, by repetition. There are even little songs for washing. In England, a rhyme spoken while scrubbing hands. Rub and roll, wash and wring, so the lice take leave and never cling. In the Low Countries, mothers sing lullabies while brushing children's hair, blending hygiene with love. A clean child is not just a cared-for child. It is one protected from gossip, from scorn, and from the judgment of neighbours. At school, if a child is fortunate enough to attend, the rituals continue. Monastic schools and cathedral schools often begin the day with washing. Boys line up before a stone basin. Water is poured by a novice or elder student. They dry their hands on shared cloths, clean their slates, and begin to chant Latin. Clean hands are expected when handling books, many of which are made from precious vellum. Ink-stained fingers are tolerated. Dirt under the nails is not. Punishments for filth can be sharp, especially in wealthier homes. A boy who forgets to clean his face may be made to stand outside, shamed with teasing rhymes. A girl whose hair is unkempt may be scolded in front of others. But more often, the response is gentle correction. Mothers comb through snarls with patient fingers. Fathers show sons how to rinse with salt water after the forge. Grandmothers scrub feet by firelight, humming old songs of comfort and care. Bathing, though rare, is a moment of great joy for children. Once or twice a season, more often in summer, families fill wooden tubs or lead-lined basins. Children are washed last, after elders and guests, but the water is still warm. They splash, laugh, and scrub one another with coarse cloths. Sometimes, if the family can spare it, soap is used. If not, ash or salt will do. Hair is rinsed, fingers examined, toes counted. To these children, the experience is not duty. It is play wrapped in ritual. And long after they grow, they will remember the feel of water on skin, the smell of rosemary, the warmth of towels dried by the hearth. Outside, village life continues. Children help scrub steps, sweep yards, gather, clean rushes. Boys clean boots and tools. Girls help with linens and herbs. There is no clear line between chore and cleanliness. Every act that touches dirt also touches the effort to remove it. And hygiene, in the eyes of a child, becomes a rhythm of belonging. To be clean is to be part of something, to be cared for, noticed, prepared for the next meal or mass or market day. It is a quiet language passed between generations, one that shapes behavior, memory, and dignity. As twilight falls and fires are lit, Liena and Thomas kneel beside their mother. She dips her cloth in rosewater, just a touch, and wipes their hands, their faces, their brows. It is a moment of stillness, of peace, of quiet love. Tomorrow will bring dust and mud and tears, but tonight they are clean. The clang of steel, the thud of hooves on churned earth, the sharp, sudden silence that falls after the last cry fades. War in the Middle Ages was rarely noble in its details, glorious in songs perhaps, but on the ground it was mud, sweat, blood, and the long, uneasy wait for wounds to heal or to fester. Amidst this brutal rhythm, hygiene was not forgotten. It simply took on a new form, harsh, improvised, and essential for survival. We find ourselves in the thick of a campaign in northern France. It is the year 1357, and a company of English soldiers, archers, pikemen, squires, rests in the shadow of a ruined chapel. The siege of a small fortress has ended, and the victors now tend their wounded and weary in makeshift camps scattered along the riverbank. Among them walks a man known only as Ralph the Leech, an old soldier turned medic, more familiar with poultices than prayers. His tunic is stained, his beard grey, but his hands are washed each morning and night in salt water steeped with vinegar and sage. He knows the truth of wounds. They turn quickly, and without cleansing, a scrape today is a grave tomorrow. The camp stinks of sweat and horses, of boiled onions and fresh blood. Yet even here, efforts are made to keep order. Buckets of water, drawn upstream, are used for washing hands and rinsing bandages. Fires burn not only for cooking, but for boiling linen strips and cleaning knives. Soap, when found, is hoarded like. Coin Ralph's surgical tools, bone saw, needle, iron tongs, are kept wrapped in oiled cloth. Before each use, he heats them in flame, more for tradition than certainty. Still, he has seen fewer deaths since adopting this practice. He does not know of bacteria, but he knows that a clean blade cuts a cleaner wound. Nearby, squires tend to the knight's armour. Before oiling the joints or buckling straps, they wash their hands, not out of ceremony, but necessity. Dirt dulls the metal. Blood ruins leather. Even in war, cleanliness preserves. For the foot soldiers, personal hygiene is a daily struggle. Water is scarce. Tents are few. Yet the habits of home persist. Men use rags to wipe their faces, rinse their feet in shallow streams, and rub soap root into their hair when lice become unbearable. Helmets are lined with cloth, washed weekly if possible, to soak up sweat and shield from blisters. In the nightly pavilion, things are little better. Sir Hugh, a noble of middling rank, sits with one leg bandaged, a gash on his thigh slowly sealing beneath layers of wine-soaked linen. His squire changes the dressing twice a day, first washing his hands in a copper basin. Wine is poured over the wound, not for taste, but because it stings and because it seems to help. The cloths are boiled between uses, dried in sunlight, and stored in a wooden chest lined with rosemary sprigs. The barber surgeon who attends Hugh has brought with him a box of salves, beeswax blended with marjoram, honey and ground sage, and a thick paste of crushed garlic. Each has its use. Each must be applied with care, and before he touches any, he washes. Bathing on campaign is rare but not absent. When the army halts for more than a few days, soldiers are encouraged to bathe in nearby rivers. Officers enforce this, not for comfort, but because dirty men fall sick, and sickness weakens ranks faster than arrows. Latrines, too, are dug, with spades and strategy. A camp of 500 men might have a dozen shallow pits, lined with branches and covered after use. Straw is spread nearby for wiping. Lime is sometimes scattered to mask the smell and deter flies. The placement of these pits, always downwind, always downhill, is taught as part of basic campcraft. Despite these efforts, disease still stalks the tents. Dysentery, typhus, fever, all flourish in crowded camps. A single shared cup can spread illness faster than a sword. And so, new rules emerge. Drink from your own mug. Boil water if it comes from still ponds. Wash your hands before meals, especially if you've cleaned wounds or tended latrines. These lessons are passed from veteran to recruit, often without words. A slap to the wrist, a pointed gesture to the soap bag, a grunt toward the wash bucket. It is not politeness, it is survival. After battle, the real test begins. The wounded must be cleaned. The dead must be buried. Swords are scrubbed with sand. Armour is wiped with vinegar-soaked cloths. Horses are brushed down, their wounds washed with salt water. Even tents are aired, the foul straw replaced, the canvas wiped of old blood. Priests bless the fallen, but also sprinkle holy water on the living, not just for their souls, but to refresh and renew. Some soldiers carry amulets believed to ward off infection. Others tie bundles of herbs to their belts. Mugwort, yarrow, chamomile. Not for luck, but because they've seen fewer boils on those who do. And when the sun sets and fires crackle, across the plain, there is a brief moment of rest. Men sit on logs, sharpening blades and picking mud from their boots. Some soak their feet in warm water. Others rinse their faces. They laugh, grumble, sing bawdy songs. But through it all, the small gestures of hygiene persist. Ralph, the leech, boils another pot of linen. The squire cleans the spoon he'll use to feed his wounded lord. A tired archer wipes his bowstring, dry to keep it from rotting. In the grime of war, cleanliness does not mean purity. It means survival. A clean wound heals. A washed hand does not carry death to the next tent. A pot scrubbed free of grease won't sour tomorrow's meal. These are not luxuries. They are lifelines. And in the morning, when the horns blow and the banners rise, the soldiers will march forward once more, bearing steel in one hand and the quiet memory of water and cloth in the other. In a small room lit by tallow candles, the air heavy with lavender and silence, a woman lies still beneath a woven coverlet. Her breath is shallow, her hands folded gently across her chest, and the hush that surrounds her is not one of fear, but of tender waiting. In the Middle Ages, death came often and came close, and when it did, it brought with it not only sorrow, but a sacred ritual of cleanliness, a final act of love. The woman's name is Beatrix. She has lived through 4 decades, borne children, nursed the sick, and harvested the fields behind, her cottage each autumn. Now, as her breath ebbs, her eldest daughter Agnes begins the first of many quiet duties. She brings a basin of warm water, scented with rosemary and myrrh, not hot, not boiling, just warm enough to soothe. A linen cloth, clean and smooth, lies folded beside it. This is not a bath to cleanse dirt. It is a gentle gesture, meant to honor the body, to ease its passing. Agnes begins with the hands. She washes each finger, each nail, with steady care. She moves to the face, dabbing the brow, the cheeks, the chin. Beatrix's skin is cool, but not yet lifeless. This act, performed in silence, is both practical and spiritual. It comforts the dying. It prepares the dead. In towns, such rituals are often overseen by women known as layers out, or sisters of repose. These women, older, wise, and experienced, are called when a death is near. They carry with them cloths, scented oils, and small combs. They wash the body, trim the nails, brush the hair, and close the eyes. They dress the deceased in clean garments, usually a simple shroud or their best robe, and arrange them with care. In noble households, the rituals are more elaborate. A dying knight is attended by his confessor, his steward, and often a physician. After last rites are spoken and the soul is entrusted to God, the servants begin their work. The body is washed with wine or rose water, dried with linen, and wrapped in a cloth marked with the sign of the cross. Rings are removed, wounds cleansed, and perfumes applied, sometimes frankincense, sometimes a blend of rosemary and clove. Cleanliness in death is not mere vanity. It is a final offering, a way to send the body forward with dignity, as if to say, here was a life worth honoring, a soul worth preparing. In monastic communities, the rituals are steeped in solemnity. When a monk passes, the brethren gather in prayer. 2 are appointed to cleanse the body, often under the supervision of the infirmarian. They do so in silence, using warm water and a sponge. The body is robed in the habit of the order, the hands folded with a wooden cross between them. The washing is not hurried. Each gesture is deliberate, part of the long litany of care that defined the monk's life. Even among the poor, effort is made. If water is scarce, a cloth is wetted and used sparingly. If herbs are unavailable, plain soap suffices. A neighbour may lend a candle or a clean shroud. A priest is called, not only to bless the soul, but to witness the care of the body. The community, no matter how humble, understands the grace of a clean farewell. After washing, the body is watched over until burial. This vigil, sometimes called a wake, is a time of quiet prayer, of soft singing, of stories whispered in the candlelight. And even during this vigil, cleanliness remains. Hands are washed before touching the deceased. Food is prepared with care. Children are kept back, not out of fear, but respect. At dawn, when the bell tolls and the grave is ready, the body is carried out. Pallbearers wash their hands before lifting the bier. The cloth covering the body is often sprinkled with holy water. Some traditions call for the grave to be lined with straw or herbs. Others place a bar of soap or a sprig of lavender with the body, a symbolic final cleansing before the earth receives it. And in those first days of mourning, the living continue their rituals. Clothing is laundered. The home is swept and aired. Bedding is changed. Not to forget the dead, but to honour their passing. Cleanliness in mourning becomes a quiet defiance. Life goes on, and in going on, it must be tended. Churches, too, hold their rites. The altar cloth is freshened, fonts are rinsed, priests wash their hands before Mass for the dead. The smell of incense joins the scent of wax and wood, and in the pews, those who loved the deceased sit with washed faces and brushed hair, holding handkerchiefs dabbed with rosewater to ease their grief. In Beatrix's village, her burial is simple: a linen-wrapped body, a wooden cross, a quiet procession. Yet every gesture speaks of care. The clean shroud, the fresh herbs laid beneath her, the combed hair, the handkerchief in Agnes's hand. These are not luxuries. They are expressions of respect, love, and the eternal hope that what is clean in death may find peace in what lies beyond. And so, the last washing is not an end. It is a threshold, a moment of stillness, a final caress before the earth is closed. Long before soap was moulded into bars, before tiled baths were carved from marble, there were the waters, cool, clear, and flowing through valleys and forests like threads of silver. In the Middle Ages, rivers and springs were more than resources. They were lifelines. They cleansed, they healed, and they carried within them whispers of the divine. Let us begin with the River Wye, winding through the green folds of the Welsh borderlands. Here, not far from Tintern Abbey, villagers descend. The banks at dawn. They come barefoot with pails in hand, their feet slipping over smooth stone. The morning air is brisk, the mist still lingering like breath upon the water. A woman named Eluned wades knee-deep into the shallows, lifting her skirts, her hands cupped to splash her face. She murmurs a prayer as the cold touches her skin. This river has served generations, its waters drawn for washing, for cooking, for blessing newborns and preparing the dead. And while its use is practical, it is also reverent. For many, the river is sacred, its origins tied to saints and legends. Children are told of angels who washed here, of miraculous cures, of old stories flowing alongside the fish. Throughout Europe, certain springs were said to hold healing power, St. Winifred's. Well, in Flintshire, Wales, is one of the most famous. Its waters bubble from stone, cool even in summer. Pilgrims have travelled here for centuries, seeking relief from skin ailments, fever, and blindness. The sick are bathed with care, their sores gently rinsed, their limbs supported by kind hands. Some leave offerings, a coin, a ribbon, a lock of hair. Monks who tend these springs often keep the area clean, not just swept, but ritually washed. Leaves are gathered, algae scraped, paths cleared. The water must remain pure, not only in body, but in spirit. At sunrise, the first pilgrims wash in silence, guided by torchlight or starlight, their prayers echoing in the cold air. In France, at the village of Saint-Baume, another spring flows beneath a rocky overhang. Here, the legend of Mary Magdalene draws pilgrims to bathe. The water is caught in stone basins, channeled into shallow pools where the faithful immerse their feet, their hands, sometimes their entire bodies. Soap is never used. It would be seen as a defilement. Only water, only touch. Even in less sacred places, water remains central to medieval hygiene. In many towns, public fountains serve as both gathering spots and sources of cleanliness. Women fill their jugs, children rinse fruit, tired labourers wash away the dust of the day. Often, these fountains are adorned with carvings, lions, saints, mythical beasts, guardians of the precious flow. Some towns employ caretakers, whose job is to maintain the pipes, sweep the stones, and clear debris from the channels. And then there are the bathhouses, built near natural springs or fed by diverted rivers. These structures offer hot and cold pools, private cubicles, and open-air steams. In Baden-Baden, Aachen, Bath, and Budapest, the ruins of Roman grandeur are restored and repurposed. The architecture is ancient, but the purpose remains the same: to bathe, to rest, to heal. Medieval bathhouses are often gender segregated, but not always. Some allow men and women to bathe together, separated by time or space. Others operate in shifts, mornings for women, afternoons for men. The bathers enter slowly, rinsing first at a side basin, then stepping into warm pools scented with herbs. Steam rises, voices hush. Soap is used sparingly. Too much clogs the water. Instead, bathers scrub with linen cloths, pumice, or fine sand. Attendants offer massages, pour warm water over shoulders, and sometimes provide small cups of spiced wine to help sweat the sickness out. For those recovering from wounds, a bath is more than comfort. It is a second chance, yet not all baths are public. In the countryside, many homes build small enclosures near streams, wooden tubs set beside fire pits, where water is heated in iron cauldrons and poured over the bather. Families take turns. Children are scrubbed last, laughing as they slide into water already used by parents and kin. The tub may be humble, but the ritual is rich. Nature's waters also serve the religious. On Easter morn, some parishes lead their flocks to rivers for blessings. The priest dips across into the stream, murmuring ancient words, then sprinkles water over the crowd. In some monastic orders, novices bathe in rivers on the eve of their vows, scrubbing away not sin, but the dust of the world they leave behind. Herbalists, too, know the value of clean water. To brew salves, they must boil nettles and comfrey. To steep linens, they need flowing streams. To rinse wounds, only the clearest spring will do. Some even carry flasks of water from sacred wells, adding a few drops to their mixtures for strength. And all throughout the land, travellers know to ask where the good water lies. An innkeeper might boast of a well with cold, sweet flow. A shepherd may offer directions to a woodland spring, known for curing bellyaches. The poorest of pilgrims carry gourds of river water like treasures, guarded from dust and spoil. Water, in this world, is not background. It is a character, alive, generous, sometimes feared, always honoured. Its voice whispers in every act of washing, healing, and preparing. Its currents link the mundane to the holy, the body to the spirit. It cools fever, softens grime, and blesses birth and burial alike. And as the rivers run on, the memory of those who bathed, believed, and were, healed remains in the water's gentle passing. Beneath the vaulted stone arches of a medieval cathedral, where coloured light filters through stained glass and incense coils like mist, water rests in stillness, quiet, blessed, waiting. It is held in a wide stone font near the entrance, or flows gently in the cloisters of a monastery. This is not water for drinking, nor for bathing in the earthly sense. It is the water of baptism, the water of renewal, the holiest form of medieval hygiene. To the medieval mind, cleanliness of the soul mattered more than any outward polish. And yet, through baptism, the spiritual and the physical met in a single, solemn act. is Sunday morning in a parish church in Burgundy. Bells ring gently, summoning villagers across fields and cobbled lanes. Inside, the priest, an aging man with kind eyes and soot on his hands from morning hearthwork, prepares the font. He fills it with spring water carried by. Altar boys, murmuring Latin blessings as he adds a pinch of blessed salt. This small addition, symbolic and ancient, is thought to strengthen the water, to cleanse it of earthly stain, to ready it for divine work. The people gather, quiet but expectant. At the heart of the congregation is a woman cradling her newborn, swaddled in linen. Her name is Isabeau, and the child, her first, is named after her father. The boy's brow glistens with sweat. He was born in midsummer, and Isabeau has spent the morning washing him with rosewater, combing his fine hair with her fingers, and choosing the softest wrap she owns. Baptism, in this church and in many others, is both sacrament and spectacle. It marks the child's entry into the faith, but also into the community. The washing away of original sin is echoed in the literal cleansing, water poured gently upon the brow, hands placed in prayer, oil rubbed in a small cross over the chest, and, for all its holiness, it is still hygiene, of a sacred kind. The font is cleaned weekly. Its basin is lined with cloth, washed and dried in the sun. The water is replaced often, never stagnant, and sometimes warmed slightly before the rite, especially for winter baptisms. The priest washes his hands before beginning. The godparents, too, are encouraged to arrive tidy, respectful, bearing no sign of excess or disorder. The ritual proceeds in soft chant. The priest lifts the water in a silver shell, pours it 3 times. The baby stirs, but does not cry. A thin line of water trickles down his temple. A linen cloth is used to dry it, white, fresh, folded carefully by the parish seamstress. Then comes the chrism oil, dabbed and rubbed, a mark of both protection and belonging. Baptismal fonts are carved with reverence. Some are plain, others are etched with vines, doves, or scenes from scripture. In older churches, they may stand on columns of marble or sit within a shallow pool. Monastic orders often build fonts in cloisters, where novices walk barefoot through stone corridors to be bathed not just in light, but in silence and sanctity. In cities, cathedrals host grand baptisms. Noble families dress in their finest robes. Musicians play soft tunes. The font is surrounded with tapestries and herbs. But whether humble or lavish, each baptism shares a truth. Water cleanses more than skin. It opens the gate to eternity. This connection between spiritual purity and physical washing extends beyond baptism. Before Mass, priests wash their hands in a silver bowl, murmuring, "Lavabo inter innocentes manos meas." I will wash my hands among the innocent. This is no idle gesture. It is a public act of readiness, of worthiness to handle the sacred vessels and the host. Some churches place a basin at the entrance, filled with holy water. Worshippers dip their fingers, cross themselves, and silently ask for cleansing. This act, small and often unnoticed, sets a tone of reverence. Clean hands, clean thoughts. In monasteries, the lavatorium serves both hygiene and symbolism. It is a long stone basin, fed by spring water or pipes, lined with spouts carved in the shape of lions or angels. Before meals, the monks gather to wash their hands, often in pairs. The water flows continuously, a reminder of divine grace. Towels hang nearby, changed regularly by the cellarer. Cleanliness is not luxury, it is a rule. During Lent and Holy Week, extra care is taken. Feet are washed, altars are scrubbed. Church floors are swept with branches of hyssop and laid with rushes. The sanctuary is made pure, ready to witness suffering and resurrection. In these weeks, cleanliness takes on a penitential beauty. To cleanse is to confess. To scrub is to pray. Back in Burgundy, Isabeau carries her son from the church, his brow still damp with sacred water. Her neighbours smile, some touching his small fingers. He is now one of them. And she, in washing him, in presenting him clean, has fulfilled not only a duty, but a deep longing to keep him whole in body and in soul. Even in death, this baptismal connection remains. When the dead are washed, some families request holy water. The priest sprinkles it as part of the final rites. The soul, bathed once more, is readied for what lies beyond. Throughout the medieval world, the sacredness of water is woven into every stage of life. A child's first washing, a monk's daily rite, a priest's lifted hands, a pilgrim's tearful cleansing at a font. All speak of a culture where cleanliness was more than habit. It was a holy longing, a yearning to be worthy, to be healed, to be seen by God not in filth, but in grace. They walk with slow steps beyond the city walls, faces wrapped in cloth, hands gloved even in summer, eyes lowered not in shame, but in quiet endurance. In the Middle Ages, lepers, beggars, and others deemed unclean were driven from towns and villages, forced to live on the periphery of society. Yet even here, far from the comforts of hearth and hall, the human yearning for cleanliness remained, a flickering light in the fog of rejection. Let us follow a man named Thomas, once a stonemason, now a leper. He lives in a colony called the Lazar House, nestled in a grove outside Norwich. The house, built by monks and sustained by charity, is simple. Whitewashed walls, a timber roof, a small chapel with a bell that tolls once at dawn and once at dusk. Thomas rises early. His fingers are curled with disease, but he moves with purpose. A basin carved from a hollowed log sits near the chapel, filled daily by a lay brother from the nearby monastery. The water is not warm, but it is clean. Thomas washes his face, careful not to touch the sores along his jaw. He dips his cloth, a square of linen washed by the nuns, and dabs behind his ears, his neck, the crook of each elbow. He is not alone. Others wait their turn, some using canes, others leaning against one another for support. They speak softly, if at all, for in this place, hygiene is a sacred routine, a tether to life's dignity. The leper's bell, worn around the neck or held in hand, serves not only to warn but to mark presence. As they move through the countryside, begging for bread or herbs, they ring it gently, respectfully. They are taught to carry a wooden dish and cup, items washed after every meal, even if the meal is only a crust and a handful of dried apples. Lazare houses across Europe adopt similar practices. In France, at Saint-Lazare near Paris, water basins are placed near every doorway. The sick wash before entering common areas. Linen is changed weekly. Staff wear cloths over their mouths, and all waste is buried far from the living quarters. Floors are sprinkled with rosemary and rue. Fires burn constantly, not just for warmth, but for fumigation. Some lepers develop their own soaps, mixtures of sheep tallow, ash, and lavender. They rub these into the cloths they wear, hoping to mask the scent of decay, to reclaim some measure of selfhood. In these humble rituals, they resist the slow loss of identity. Beggars, too, practice a kind of cleanliness. Contrary to the belief that they lived in squalor by choice, many poor folk kept their belongings meticulously clean, partly out of habit, partly out of hope. A woman begging at the gate of York Minster washes her feet each evening in the Ouse, using a scrap of wool cloth. Her hands are cracked but scrubbed. Her hair, though hidden under a hood, is brushed with a wooden comb. She carries a pouch of herbs, lavender for scent, mint for the mouth, wormwood to keep lice away. A worn rosary hangs from her belt, not just a symbol of faith, but a reminder to pray while washing. Cleanliness, for her, is both comfort and shield. It is how she presents herself to the world, how she affirms that though she has little, she is still human. Charitable institutions often provide wash houses. In London, a small hospice near Smithfield runs a daily bathing hour. The poor are admitted in pairs. Water is drawn from a nearby well, heated in copper pots, poured into large wooden tubs. Each bather is given soap, a towel, and a clean shift. The staff, often lay sisters, scrub the tubs after each use. It is not luxurious, but it is warm. It is safe. Even prisons, grim as they were, sometimes allowed washing. In the Tower of London, those of noble blood are granted a weekly bath. Guards bring in basins. Towels are supplied. The poor, if jailed for debt or theft, must beg their families to bring soap or clean clothes. If no one comes, they wash with water alone, using rags torn from their own tunics. Within all these acts, from the leper's basin to the prisoner's towel, lies a powerful truth. Hygiene was not reserved for the elite. It was claimed, defended, cherished by even the most cast out. It marked the line between despair and dignity. Some cities recognize this. Bruges, for example, maintains a public washing station outside the city gate, open to the poor on Sundays. A church nearby provides lye soap and fresh linen once a month. The city of Bologna permits bathhouses to offer reduced rates to beggars and pilgrims, paid for by guild donations. These gestures, though modest, ripple outward. A clean beggar is more likely to be fed. A washed leper is less feared. There is also spiritual care. Priests and friars who minister to the margins often include washing as part of their rites. A dying beggar receives not only the sacrament, but also a final cleansing. A leper confessing beneath a tree is given water to wash his hands after tears have fallen. In these quiet acts, compassion and hygiene entwine, and always there is hope. Thomas, though scarred and slowed, washes daily. He still combs his hair, oils his boots, and sews patches into his robe. He believes that to stay clean is to stay seen, that someday, perhaps, he will be allowed to walk into the village square again, not as an outcast but as a man. The heart of the medieval home was not a throne or a grand staircase, but the hearth, a low stone or clay structure, always warm, always faintly dusted with ash. Here, food was cooked, warmth was gathered, and life stirred quietly, day by day. Around it, cleanliness unfolded, not in grand displays, but in daily acts, woven into the rhythm of ordinary time. In a cottage in Somerset, smoke curls up through a hole in the roof. The morning light spills over a freshly swept floor, a table, wiped with water and mint, and a wooden ladle hanging from a hook, its curve darkened by years of stirring porridge. This is the home of Willa, a widow with 3 sons. Her world is small, 1 room, 2 beds, and a loft, but every corner bears the touch of her effort. The floor is earthen, but not neglected. Each morning, Willa sweeps it with a bundle of dried broomcorn. She scatters fresh rushes or herbs, pennyroyal, thyme, sometimes chamomile, across the swept surface. These herbs serve more than scent. They deter fleas and lice, repel mice, and soften the air. Twice a year, the rushes are gathered, burned, and replaced entirely. But weekly, they are refreshed in patches, chosen with care. The hearth itself must be kept clean. Ash is scooped out daily, sometimes saved for soap making or to scrub pots. The iron cauldron is rinsed with hot water and a cloth rubbed with salt. Willa scrubs her wooden bowls with sand and water, then leaves them to dry on the sill where sunlight touches them. Knives are wiped with vinegar. Spoons are rinsed in the basin. Though her home has no running water, a clay jug stands always full, near the door. Her eldest son fetches it from the well each morning. A smaller basin nearby is used for washing hands and faces. Linen towels hang on pegs, washed weekly in the stream with ash soap and dried over hedges. Laundry is a task of both routine and labour. Clothing, bedding and towels are boiled in large pots outside, stirred with wooden paddles. Soap is made from tallow and ash, sometimes scented with rosemary or marjoram. Whites are soaked longer, sometimes with sour milk or stale urine to lift stains. Once washed, clothes are wrung out, beaten with sticks, then hung across lines or laid flat on clean grass. In wealthier homes, such as the manors of minor nobility, the structure is more elaborate, but no less reliant on care. Servants rise early to sweep flagged floors, change bed linens, and scrub tables with cloths dipped in vinegar. The kitchens, vast and hot, require constant cleaning. Spilled meat juice is sprinkled with salt and scraped clean. The chopping boards are scoured with ash. Brass pans are polished weekly with lemon and sand. Even chamber pots must be emptied. In grand houses, this task falls to a lowly servant, often a boy. The pots are carried to the latrine or emptied into covered pits. They are then rinsed, sometimes with vinegar or river water, and replaced with sprigs of lavender or rosemary to reduce smell. Linen covers may be used to maintain modesty. The task is not praised, but it is necessary, and a clean chamber pot is a sign of a well-run house. In towns, urban homes make do with less space, but similar care. Wives sweep stoops, pour wash water into gutters with a caul, wear below, and hang linens from windowsills. Public regulations require them to keep the area in front of their homes tidy. Refuse must be gathered. Waste water must not be thrown too close to the neighbour's door. To violate these rules is to risk fine, or worse, the scorn of the parish. Inside, rooms are small, but they carry signs of pride. A polished pewter plate, a broom hung beside the door, a basin wiped dry after every use. Even poor homes often keep a bundle of clean cloths and a bar of soap hidden in a chest. These are precious. These are for Sunday, for guests, for sickness and burial. Children are taught from early years to help. They scrub pots with river pebbles. They fold linens. They brush dirt from shoes before entering. A girl of 8 may be trusted to sweep the hearth, to rinse bowls, to beat dust from cloaks. A boy may carry water, wipe the table, air the bedding. In these tasks, they learn order, patience, and pride. Seasonal routines also shape domestic hygiene. Spring brings airing of clothes and bedding, windows opened wide. Summer means river baths, laundry spread across fields. Autumn demands the scrubbing of barrels, the cleaning of hearths for winter fires. And winter brings its own quiet chores. Candle wax scraped from holders, soot swept from chimneys, mould watched for in corners. Herbs and smoke play a constant role. A brazier of juniper may be lit to purify the air. A cloth soaked in vinegar and hung in the doorway may keep fevers away. In times of illness, whole rooms are washed down with rosemary tea. These practices are not based on science as we know it, but on generations of watching and learning, on the wisdom of grandmothers and the quiet certainties of lived life. And through it all, the medieval home breathes in rhythm with these acts. Cleanliness is not separate from living. It is woven into each movement. The scrubbing of hands before kneading dough, the rinsing of a comb, the dusting of a stool. It is done not with extravagance, but with care. In the corner, Willa's youngest son sleeps on a straw-stuffed mattress, covered in a clean linen sheet. A woolen blanket, brushed and aired, rests over him. The floor beneath is swept. The hearth glows faintly. And in that flickering quiet, one sees the result of a day's work. Not loud, not lauded, but honest, whole and clean. Part 17. Books and Basins. Hygiene in the Medieval Schools. Amid cloisters and cobblestone, beneath the spires of newly built lecture halls, the hum of learning stirs through the towns of Oxford, Paris, and Bologna. Here, in ink-stained chambers, where ideas rise like incense and the rustle of parchment is a constant sound, young men gather to study law, medicine, theology, and the liberal arts. These are the universities of the medieval world, and within their crowded halls, hygiene carves a modest but essential role. Let us walk the worn corridors of Oxford's Merton College, sometime in the early 14th century. The day begins with the tolling of a bell. Students rise from their pallets, simple straw mattresses laid in rows within shared dormitories known as halls or hostels. Before donning their robes, most begin with water. A cistern in the courtyard feeds a central basin where scholars line up, bleary-eyed, to wash their hands and faces. The water is cold, drawn from an underground spring. A few mutter psalms as they rinse. There are no individual washrooms. no soap at every bedside. But cleanliness is expected, even in this austere world of scholarship. Students carry linen cloths for drying, stored in small wooden boxes or hanging from pegs near their sleeping quarters. Combs are passed between friends. Sand is sometimes used to scrub the skin, or a coarse cloth rubbed briskly across arms and cheeks. The wealthier among them, often sons of knights or merchants, bring scented water in flasks, lavender, elderflower, or rose, infused by their mothers or purchased from apothecaries. These are dabbed on temples or poured into wash basins. Poorer scholars make do with fresh water, but their habits are not far behind in diligence. Hygiene is not enforced for comfort, it is enforced for order. Each college has a set of statutes, written in Latin, dictating how students must dress, behave, and maintain their living space. Clean robes are required on feast days and before examinations. Hands must be washed before meals and before handling books. Rooms are to be swept weekly. Bed linens aired monthly. Violations may result in fines, fasting, or a mild beating. In the refectory, hygiene meets ritual. Before meals, students enter the lavatorium, a long stone trough fed by pipes, where they wash under the watch of the senior scholar. Towels are provided, hung on hooks in rows. The hands must be washed, the mouth wiped clean. Fingernails examined. This is not a silent process, but it is restrained. Cleanliness here is linked to reverence. They eat in silence, listening to scripture or Aristotle read aloud, chewing slowly, keeping hands visible above the table. Food is served on shared platters. Thus, clean fingers are a necessity. Water jugs are passed, and napkins stitched with the college's sigil rest at each bench. After the meal, the lavatorium is used again to cleanse hands and rinse cups. In the libraries, the emphasis continues. Books are precious, hand-copied, often chained to desks, and must be handled with care. No ink-stained hands, no grease. From meals, a student caught handling a text with dirty fingers may be expelled. Some colleges provide cloths beside the library door. Others keep basins near scriptoriums, especially for those who copy manuscripts. In winter, cold slows washing. Students keep flasks of water near the hearth to prevent freezing. Some warm their hands before touching books, but still, they rinse. Still, they clean. Medical students in particular are taught the value of cleanliness, even before the dawn. Of germ theory. In Bologna and Montpellier, future physicians learn to wash their hands before examining cadavers. Dissection, rare but permitted in some places, is preceded by a ritual washing. Tools are boiled, tables scrubbed, linens changed. Students wash again before leaving. This is not yet sterilization as we know it, but it is care, a primitive form of hygiene born from observation. Outside the universities, hygiene follows scholars wherever they lodge. Most rent rooms from townspeople, widows, merchants, or guilds. They are expected to keep their space clean. Wash basins are provided. Bedding is changed by the host, but students must maintain their own clothes, brushes, and books. A careless student may be evicted, a neat one, often forgiven for late rent. Bathhouses near the university quarters cater specifically to scholars. A few pence buys an hour of steam and a wooden tub. Soap is extra. Students may bathe weekly, sometimes less, depending on money and schedule. But when they do, they scrub thoroughly. Elbows, knees, behind the ears, then dry with towels borrowed from the host. And yes, even during studies, lice persist. Students carry combs made of wood or bone. Some sleep in head wraps soaked in vinegar. Others use mixtures of ash and herbs to deter pests. Flea combs are shared, and bed linens shaken out each morning. A scholar too infested may find himself mocked in verse, or worse, made an example in front of his peers. In universities where women are admitted, rare, but not unknown in certain convent-run institutions, hygiene is held to equal or higher standards. Nuns in charge of instruction emphasize cleanliness as part of virtue. Girls are taught to wash daily, to keep their writing tools clean, to mend clothes swiftly. They share perfumes, rinse in basins lined with flowers, and sew linen cloths to wipe sweat or dust from their brows. Throughout all of this, hygiene is not spoken of often, but it is lived. It is seen in the student who brushes crumbs from his robe, in the apprentice who cleans ink from his nails, in the scholar who scrubs his desk before copying a text. It is present in the rustle of clean linen, the scent of rosemary from a shared flask, the ripple of water in the morning basin. And when these young men and women return to their homes, some to courts, others to parishes or shops, they carry these habits with them, quiet customs that shape the world beyond books. High above the muddy lanes and crowded hearths, within walls of stone draped in velvet and gold, a very different world of hygiene unfolds. A world where the act of bathing is not only a matter of health, but of ritual, spectacle, and power. In the royal courts of medieval Europe, cleanliness becomes a theatre, where kings and queens cleanse their bodies not in solitude, but before servants, courtiers, and sometimes the eyes of the realm itself. Let us walk into the court of King Edward III of England in the year 1362. The king is to be bathed, a rare and formal occasion, though he washes his hands and face daily, as any nobleman would. Full immersion is reserved for special times, after battle, before coronation, in the days leading to high feast, or following a long journey. The preparations begin long before. Water touches skin. In a chamber high within Windsor Castle, windows are flung wide to let in the summer air. Servants carry in a great wooden tub, lined with linens to protect the royal skin. Water is heated in copper cauldrons downstairs, carried up by footmen, and poured into the tub until steam rises and curls about the tapestries. The tub is not plain. It is ornamented with carvings, lions, fleur-de-lis, the arms of the house. Around it, screens are arranged to shield the king from excessive view, though selected courtiers and attendants remain. A gentleman of the chamber lays out a robe of white linen, embroidered at the sleeves. A page prepares a flask of scented oil, lavender and bay, and still, the bath waits. The king enters slowly, not from vanity, but from formality. His body has borne the weight of crown and chainmail. It is no longer young, but it is honoured. He steps into the bath with aid, lowers himself, and sighs. The water is not scalding, but it is rich with scent. Rosemary to cleanse, chamomile to soften, mint to invigorate. He is not left alone. 2 grooms scrub his back and shoulders with cloths. One washes his feet, another combs his hair with an ivory-handled comb, soaked first in rose water. The atmosphere is solemn but gentle. Music may play softly, a harp, a reed flute, just outside the chamber. The bath is long, not hurried, and every movement is recorded in the minds of those who serve. To serve at the king's bath is an honour. After the bath, the king is dried with thick towels, warmed by the hearth. A fresh shift is drawn over his head, fine enough to show the wealth of his court. He is rubbed lightly with scented balm, especially at the temples and wrists. His fingernails are trimmed, his beard combed. Cleanliness for a king is not luxury, it is image. It is power shown through grace. Queens too participate in such rituals. Queen Philippa of Hainault, Edward's consort, maintains a similar routine. Her bath is screened more completely, attended by ladies-in-waiting. They use scented cloths, combs of polished horn, and oils from the East, brought by merchants of Venice or Genoa. Her linens are perfumed. Her chamber is sprinkled with rose petals before and after bathing. But she too washes not only to be clean, but to be prepared. To meet ambassadors, to speak with bishops, to receive noble visitors. Royal children are bathed with care from infancy. Nurses use linen cloths, soft soap made with almond oil, and warm water poured from silver ewers. Every week their garments are laundered, their rooms aired. Their bedding is changed more frequently than most peasants change their tunics, and always herbs are present. lavender for the head, rosemary for the feet, chamomile for sleep. Beyond the bath, hygiene in the royal court extends to every detail. The royal kitchens are held to high standards. Food tasters cleanse their hands before touching meat. Platters are wiped before service. Wine goblets are rinsed before each meal. Towels are laid at the table for wiping fingers between courses. A squire stands behind each diner with a basin and jug, pouring water for hand washing before and after meals. Napkins are embroidered, folded precisely, changed between guests. Palace floors are swept daily, sometimes twice. Herb bundles are scattered across halls to scent the air and quiet. Footfalls. Candles are trimmed. Chamber pots are emptied and washed. And the royal privy, built into a projecting tower over a running stream, is scrubbed with vinegar and scrubbed again with rushes. A fresh bundle of herbs is tied near the seat each morning. The physicians of the court, many trained in Salerno or Paris, advise frequent hand-washing, occasional bathing, and the burning of juniper in sick rooms. When the king is ill, a regimen of cleansing is observed. Sheets changed daily, hands and face washed with rosewater, a poultice applied with clean cloth. Illness is met not only with prayers, but with hygiene. Cleanliness in royalty is also symbolic. Before coronation, a king is bathed in a ritual of purification. Water is poured by bishops. Oils are applied in the sign of the cross. The body is made clean, so the soul may receive the crown. The coronation robe is donned only after this washing. The throne is mounted only after the towel is folded away. And, even in death, the ritual persists. A deceased monarch is washed, anointed, and dressed in white. The body is laid in state, sweet herbs burned around the bier. Attendants keep vigil, wiping the brow, freshening the air. The people file past, not to see splendor, but to see that even a king dies clean. Cleanliness in the royal world is about more than soap and water. It is a language, a display, a daily proof that order reigns, that wealth brings not chaos, but control. And yet, beneath the embroidery and marble basins, the act of cleansing is the same as in the humblest home. A cloth, a bowl, a breath of steam, and a human touch. The road winds on, through fields, across rivers, into thick forests, and down into the hearts of cities and villages alike. It is the road of the pilgrim, the merchant, the messenger, and the wandering friar. Dust clings to boots, the sun bakes the skin, and the wind brings both chill and sweat. And yet, even on these weary paths of travel, hygiene has its place, practiced with intention, carried in cloth bundles and leather pouches, and preserved through rituals of necessity and faith. Let us walk for a while with a pilgrim named Arnulf. He travels the long sacred road from Winchester to the shrine of St. Thomas Becket at Canterbury. His journey is not one of luxury. He sleeps in barns, under trees, or at the charity of monasteries. His robe is coarse, his sandals worn thin, yet in his satchel he carries 3 prized possessions: a linen towel, a sliver of lye soap, and a comb carved from horn. Each evening, as the light fades and the insects begin to sing, Arnulf finds a stream or a well. He kneels, unwraps his bundle, and begins to wash. Hands first, then face, then arms and neck. If there's enough water, he rinses his feet, sore and red from walking. He scrapes his nails with a splinter of wood, rubs his sandals clean, and wipes down the leather strap of his satchel. These are not gestures of vanity. They are acts of resilience. To stay clean is to stay well. A blister, left filthy, becomes an infection. A dirty tunic attracts lice. A greasy hand spreads disease. Arnulf has seen pilgrims fall behind, not because of wolves or bandits, but because they neglected the quiet rituals of hygiene. Many travellers, like Arnulf, adopt such routines. They carry small flasks of vinegar to rinse wounds or soothe bites. They chew parsley or mint to sweeten the breath. They wash their shirts in rivers, drying them on bushes while walking bare-chested in the sun. They soak cloths in scented water to wrap around their necks during hot days. And each inn, monastery, or hostelry offers its own basin and towel, often placed near the fire or in a covered alcove. Monasteries, particularly along pilgrimage routes, maintain washrooms for guests. At Cluny or Monte Cassino, pilgrims are welcomed with warm broth, clean, straw, and the offer of bathing. A monk provides water heated over coals, a cloth for drying, sometimes a sprig of lavender. It is considered a holy duty to help cleanse those who come in faith. Merchants, though more worldly, observe similar habits. A wool trader from Flanders, travelling to Lyons, stops each evening to bathe his face and wipe his wares. He rinses his hands before opening his chests of cloth. In the towns where he stays, he pays extra for a room with a small basin and towel. He soaks his feet, brushes his tunic, oils his boots. A clean merchant is a trusted merchant. Travelling. Physicians carry entire kits: soap, oil, tweezers, linen cloths, and small jars of herbs. They wash before examining any patient, rinsing their fingers in wine or vinegar if water is scarce. They wrap their tools in oiled parchment, clean them at each village, and burn used cloths when possible. Even beggars on the road find ways to stay clean. Some carry river stones to scrub their hands. Others press rosemary against their temples. A clean beggar receives more alms, more sympathy. A priest is more likely to bless a pilgrim who smells of herbs than of sweat and rot. In larger towns, bathhouses welcome travellers. For a few coins, a bather receives a small tub, warm water, soap, and a towel. Some offer a hot steam room. Others provide scrubbers, who rub down guests with cloths and apply oil afterward. Travellers often mark their arrival with a bath and a good meal, a ritual of return to civility after days or weeks on the road. Public fountains, too, serve as places of refreshment and hygiene. In Florence or Bruges, travellers stop to splash water on their faces, rinse their hands, or even drink from the shaded basin. Children are washed here. Pots are cleaned. Dogs and horses are watered. A well-kept fountain is a sign of a well-kept town. Religious rituals also promote hygiene. At the gates of Compostela, before entering the holy city, pilgrims wash in the river Lavacolla. The name itself means to wash the tail, a reference to the full-body cleansing expected before approaching the cathedral. There, in a secluded spot, pilgrims scrub themselves, change into clean tunics, and remove lice with the help of fellow travellers. Cleanliness becomes a form of preparation, a rite before sacred encounter. And yet, even the road itself teaches adaptation. During dry seasons, when streams are scarce, pilgrims learn to conserve water, using the same cup for washing and drinking, soaking cloths and pressing them to the skin, scraping dirt from limbs with blunt knives or smooth sticks. They learn to recognize safe springs, to avoid foul-smelling wells, to ask the locals where the cleanest source lies. Women, especially those traveling alone or with children, are meticulous. They pack herbs, thyme, sage, chamomile, and sew them. Into the hems of their shifts, they use ash mixed with rainwater for scrubbing. They keep scarves over their heads to protect hair from dust and lice. Mothers teach daughters how to wash modestly in streams, how to dry cloths discreetly, how to cleanse with dignity even in public places. And when night falls and campfires flicker in the fields, the sound of water splashing, of cloths wrung and spread, of combs dragged through tangled hair can be heard across the hills. It is a song of travellers, a rhythm as old as the road. For even when home is far behind, even when comforts are few, the desire to be clean remains. And so we come to the end of this long, quiet journey, a path traced through stone halls and forest springs, through candle-lit cottages and crowded cities, along rivers and battlefields, through the quiet rituals of monks, mothers, merchants, and kings. A journey not of invention, but of recognition. For in the Middle Ages, to be clean was not always easy, but it was always meaningful. What have we seen? We have seen that hygiene in medieval times was not forgotten, not dismissed in filth or darkness, but embraced in forms both humble and sacred. It was a rhythm, a repetition, a slow pulse beneath the greater heartbeats of faith, labour, and survival. In the peasant's hut, we watched the daily sweep of ash from the hearth, the rinsing of hands in the morning basin, the herbs scattered across earthen floors, not to impress but to protect. In the towns, we walked cobbled streets where chamber pots were emptied with warnings, where barbers scoured their razors and butchers washed their blocks, where bathhouses welcomed the weary with steam and silence. Among monks, we stood at the lavatorium, hearing only the trickle of water and the quiet prayers that accompanied it. We felt the rough linen used to scrub ink-stained fingers, and we learned that to be clean was to be ready, to copy scripture, to serve others, to approach the altar. In noble manners, we entered chambers warmed with fire and scented with clove. We saw how ladies wiped their brows with rose water, how servants changed linens with care, how even the highborn prepared for prayer and feast with washing and grooming. On battlefields, we felt the urgency of hygiene, a need sharper than sword. We watched soldiers clean wounds with salt and honey, boil cloths at dusk, and use vinegar to scour the hands that must carry life or death. In death itself, we saw the last washing, gentle, reverent, offered by daughters, priests, or midwives. A ritual of closure, a final kindness. We journeyed with pilgrims, rising from riverbanks with clean faces, stepping into sacred cities after ritual baths. We passed merchants who wiped their wares, beggars who kept a cloth soaked in mint, lepers who washed with devotion, though banished from sight, and always, behind every act of cleansing, there was intention. Medieval hygiene was not perfect. It did not know the germ, the microscope, the laboratory, but it knew the feel of water on tired skin. It knew the relief of clean sheets, the peace of a washed brow, the comfort of a sweetened breath. It knew, in its deepest places, that to be clean is to be cared for. The people of the Middle Ages, often painted in the harsh shades of ignorance or superstition, emerge in softer light when we watch them wash. They rise early to fetch water. They scrub wooden spoons. They boil cloths with herbs. They anoint the sick. They prepare their bodies before approaching God. They do these things not because they must be pristine, but because they must be present, to be ready, to be respectful, to be alive. Hygiene in this time was a shared effort. The woman who combed her children's hair each morning passed on more than order. She passed on love. The monk who swept the cloister floor every dawn passed on more than cleanliness. He passed on care. The tanner who rinsed his knife, the baker who wiped his bench, the laundress who beat linen in the stream, all passed on the same message. This place matters. This body matters. This moment matters. Modern eyes may look back with judgment at the lack of daily bathing, the communal use of basins, the scarcity of soap, but we must also look with humility and recognize the ingenuity within limits. The medieval world used what it had: vinegar, ash, herbs, rain, and routine. From these, it built systems of care. We also find something that modern life, at times, forgets. The stillness of hygiene, the quiet of it, the way water poured from a jug can sound like prayer, the way brushing a child's hair can become a song, the way lighting a sprig of lavender and scrubbing the sill can invite peace into a room. These were not chores, they were the cadence of life, and they belonged to everyone, from the queen with her perfumed basin to the shepherd with his soap-root bundle, from the scribe with ink-blackened hands to the dying farmer whose daughter washed his face before laying him to rest. They remind us that the body is not a thing to be conquered or hidden, but something to be honored, tended, respected, cherished, even as it grows old or broken or tired. In the closing of this tale, imagine the hush of a medieval evening. The fire is low. A basin sits by the hearth filled for the next day. A comb rests beside it. Linen hangs near the smoke hole to dry. Outside, the well is quiet. The stars shimmer. And in each home, someone washes their hands, rinses a cup, folds a cloth, lights a candle. They do not think of history. They think only of the moment, and in that moment, the world becomes clean again. Thank you for walking this path. May your own rituals, however small, be filled with peace, and may you always find in water and will the quiet strength of those who came before.